Okay, in this video, I'm going to talk about unheard of insights into showing you that the information I have is unheard of insights. So this is just what God told me to share with you so that we will all have a better understanding of what's really going on and what's really not going on. So quitting smoking and quitting drinking are hard to quit or stop. Now, first of all, when I say quitting smoking or quitting drinking, what's most important to know about it is quitting something is to quit something. If you're not a quitter, you won't want to quit anything. And so the behavior of quitting anything when you're not a quitter makes it all the more hard to stop smoking and drinking, because you don't want to quit. You don't want to quit anything. You want to start stuff and get it going on, and ultimately coming on and not going on. But ultimately, the idea here is stopping. Now let's look at the word stopping smoking, stopping drinking, as compared to starting or staying where you can't stop. See, the idea is when you don't want to stop something, especially when you've already done it, you've been doing it. You don't. When you started smoking, you did not want to stop smoking. You wanted to start smoking, and when you started drinking, you weren't into stopping drinking and stopping it. You were into actually starting it. So the reality is that the behavior right off the bat is already a distinctly powerful sensation of starting smoking and continuing it, and drinking, and ultimately it's fun and it's empowering and it's entertaining and it's everything we love when we're young. And when we start to get old and we need to quit smoking or quit drinking, it just becomes hard. But there's much, but I haven't given you any insights yet that are really valuable. So the valuable part of the insight to have here about it is that stopping when you were starting smoking and drinking, there was a reason why you started it. Now, I'm going to talk about the reasons that you started smoking or drinking that you didn't know about, that are the unheard of. You started smoking, and this is especially hard for men, because men are more so they're going to have a hard time quitting than women. They won't want to quit, but ultimately they'll have a hard time quitting, because men will learn how to draw their spirit to themselves and pull their spirit inside themselves to be self-possessed of their strength. They'll learn to do it at a young age when they think it's what they want to do, and it's ultimately associated with rebelliousness and smoking itself, because a young kid who learns how to pull himself together with a cigarette, he'll do it with the cigarette. It'll be the cigarette that he does it with. He'll be a man. He'll be manly. And ultimately, when you look at the behavior of a kid who's smoking, he's not so much trying to start breathing smoke into his lungs, and that's not at all what attracts him to doing it. In fact, if the kids who start smoking don't even like it, well, they truly do it anyways until they do like it, and they do like it, and they become to like it because it actually is doing something. So the important thing to mention here is when you're smoking or drinking, you're doing something, and ultimately you're doing something that empowers you in more than one way, and ultimately in many ways, and there's specifically different many ways that you can empower yourself through drinking and smoking. Smoking we'll talk about first. Smoking is a way that a child, a young boy, will, and women too, but this is mostly more behavior of boys, where they'll specifically start smoking to be like dad, be tough, be cool, be pulling and drawing in his spirit with a power, self-possessed state of empowerment. He's got his soul in him and he's holding it strong. And ultimately, a kid who's having a hard time being himself in school or in life, he's very much maybe afraid of things, and doesn't have confidence. Ultimately, he'll be building his confidence smoking. Often, it's unfortunate that it happens that way, or this way, that they're actually developing their confidence is through the smoking itself, the ritual of it. So understand that smoking is a ritual of pulling in your spirit, and when you suck and drag on the cigarette, you're pulling the smoke into your lungs, and it is either accompanied by a sensation of I don't like that. Well, ultimately, I'll love it if I can do it. And ultimately, what can I do when I smoke a cigarette I'll love it so much? Well, I'll be strong like dad. I'll be a tough guy like the Marlboro Man. Well, what does that mean? Well, it means something. And understand no one asks these questions, and we'll have most of these insights will not be seen before until now. Or maybe they were seen before, but they were lost to the idea that much of the information we're getting is misinformation and not the right information. To get the right information, it'll be unheard of insights. So the idea is that to gain the confidence, the child will be starting smoking by what he's really doing is a ritual in spirit. It's to draw his own father spirit into him. And he does it through the idea that he's being a man. And while he's smoking and feeling like he's being a man, he might be coughing and choking, but he'll be, so he won't like the cigarette. But he'll love the idea that he could be a man, and he'll love the idea that he could be self-confident. So understand that most kids who start smoking, they don't do it for any other reason than the reasons I'm speaking about. That they weren't trying to be a man. They're trying to draw in their own spirit. They're trying to bring their soul into their body and hold on to it powerfully to let it collect and be strong. And so they're learning how to be a man. It's manly. It's the way men are. I've got my own. It's mine. And the cigarette not only accentuates and reflects that truth, this truth, that the child is able to learn how to draw their own spirit within to them and become strong like their father, taking the father spirit. So women will do it too, and they'll take the mother spirit doing it. It's less powerful and less defining with a woman, because a little girl starts smoking will do it for the confidence, but not for the manliness. She doesn't need the manliness, and so she'll not need the cigarette either that much. So a girl starting smoking will be less addicted right away, and ultimately might not like it and might try it, because she's trying to get the manly confidence of her dad, but she'll ultimately experience that, I don't know if I want that manly confidence, I don't need to smoke. And ultimately many women will take the mother leadership role of the confidence, which is not associated with the mother spirit. It's associated with the father spirit only. You see, when you start to smoke and pull the father spirit in, it's the father spirit you're pulling in. Even if it's a girl learning how to smoke, she'll be learning how to pull the father spirit in, and she's going to be maybe pulling the mother spirit in too. And the boy won't want to pull in the mother spirit. It won't give him any confidence to have the mother spirit. He'll actually not be confident with the mother spirit. So when a boy starts smoking, it is often for very different reasons than when a girl starts smoking. Although they're both getting confidence, the woman is going to take the mother and gain just a little confidence, but not much. And ultimately, that's not why she's doing it then. So women who want the father spirit and want to pull it in will do it with more confidence and want to smoke. But women who are only getting to pull the mother spirit in, they don't really want the father spirit, they'll smoke and they'll choke and they'll cough and they'll say, I don't like cigarettes. It's not really worth it. I don't need the father spirit. I'm a mom anyways. I'll be a mom, or I'm a woman. And ultimately, the girls who start smoking won't be able to reason any of this. They're certainly not going to reason they're pulling in father spirit or mother spirit, or that there's a difference, or that both of them bring confidence, but the mother spirit brought to you doesn't bring a boy any confidence. In fact, it'll make him not confident. So the boy will be doing something and starting smoking for a very different reason than a girl would. But they'll both do it, and there'll be less smokers that are women, and ultimately there's a lot of smokers that are women. In fact, if women were more smokers than men, I would say it's not true. But ultimately, if I'm wrong, I would say then they're either pulling in the father spirit and they like it, or it's a spirit of control, which they don't associate with the father spirit, and they love it. They still like it. So they won't say. You could hear a woman say, well, I don't pull in the father spirit and I don't like it and I don't need it, but I still like smoking. I'll say, well, that's because you like to pull in the dominant, controlling spirit. You can call it mommy or daddy, you don't care, but you'll take the control and you'll take it. Even if it is dad only, you'll still be mommy using it. See, it'll bring less confidence to the women in general, and it'll make it all the more enjoyable in men. Men will love to start smoking and keep smoking. Now, the behavior of the drinking is similar. So when you drink alcohol and you're drinking alcohol, you're doing it to avoid feelings of fear and lack of confidence. Alcohol brings you confidence fast, and it's not necessarily pulling in any spirit. When you drink alcohol, you're putting the spirit in you. It's also why they call it a spirit. So they call alcohol spirits. Why they do is for a reason, because when you put spirits into you, you can drink the spirits into you through the alcohol, which are spirits, or you could also say that it's just a coincidence and it has nothing to do with it, you silly idiot. And I'll say, well, I know, but it's actually has something to do with it. Understand that they call alcohol spirits because they are spirits. They get into you, and you'll drink them into you, and it's why you act out in every kind of way that's not normal to the spirits you take when you're not drinking. And the spirits you take when you're not drinking are not the spirits that are in alcohol or considered to be alcohol spirits, because they're actually specific spirits you take into you, whether you drink them or not, or get them some other way. Which means it's possible to get alcohol spirits without drinking them, but you're not going to get them without drinking them. That's what spirits are. They're alcohol spirits. They get into you when you drink them. They'll also be what you're acting out. So if you're acting... Okay, so I'm being told to tell you that they should know that they should not be considered to be knowledgeable in any way. So I think what God would be telling me to tell you is that don't think that you're knowledgeable in any way. You don't have any knowledge. Knowledge has not been given to you, and you really don't have any. And ultimately, you might have confidence, which can go alongside knowledge. Knowledge comes with confidence, and when you take in knowledge, you'll take in confidence. You can take in confidence. You could take in confidence. It could be incompetent confidence, or it could be actually something that makes you competent. But you'll take in knowledge with confidence or knowledge without confidence. And so what I'm speaking about here is the relationship between taking in competence with confidence regarding alcohol and cigarettes, taking in competence with confidence, whether it is knowledgeable or having knowledge. There's no knowledge necessary. Now, it's important to mention that if you can take in competence and just take it in competently without any needing knowledge, it's the act of smoking and drinking itself, which means that not only will alcohol and cigarettes help you feel more competent, you will not need any knowledge. You will not need to know anything or become schooled in anything while you're doing it. Now let's look at the ritual of smoking and drinking and saying that when you take in knowledge, often taking in knowledge and competence, taking in competence with knowledge is how you do it. If you become competent because you take in knowledge, you don't start drinking or smoking. And you can take in knowledge, but the truth is knowledge will often make you feel not confident because the knowledge you're taking in might not be good knowledge or good news. And so to take in knowledge is a ritual that people will use to try to get confident. They'll try to get their confidence through knowing more and having more knowledge. And ultimately, what they'll experience is it's not as good as the ritual of smoking and drinking, because you could take in confidence smoking and drinking without getting any knowledge. Therefore, there's nothing to debate, nothing to know. And so I don't need any knowledge. All I need is my cigarettes and my alcohol, and I'm fine. I'll feel fine. My confidence will be high. I'm not going to be trying to understand anything, and I don't need to understand anything. In fact, it's a good feeling of I don't need no knowledge. It's a perfect way to get confidence, drinking and smoking, without needing to have any knowledge. And in fact, I need no knowledge. It's also why people who smoke and drink will be less knowledgeable, and also sometimes more knowledgeable. It depends on truly what they're doing. You can take in knowledge with drinking and smoking, especially drinking. So more so than smoking, there's nothing really to know about smoking other than you do it and you like it or you don't. But with drinking, there's a lot of reason to take in knowledge. Now let's talk about knowledge itself and the act of drinking. The drama, the theater, the art, the sculpturing, the philosophies of the ancient Greeks were all tools that were invented from God and Goddess, which gave them, and it's important to mention gods and goddesses both gave us our civilization, also gave us our knowledge. They also gave us our theater, our drama, our acting ability, stage, Hollywood, philosophy of every kind, different kinds of philosophy, different kinds of drama and art, all art, the art of everything. It came from God and Goddess. It comes from and delivers confidence and knowledge. Knowledge does not always give you confidence. And understand then, humans are used to drawing upon knowledge to gain confidence, also avoiding any knowledge that doesn't give them confidence. So understand, with cigarettes and smoking, drinking, you don't need any knowledge other than to say with alcohol, you will often gain knowledge when you're drinking. It'll be when you're doing the most searching for philosophy itself, and is from alcohol as a tool. So what if I told you that the philosophical world was created through alcohol drinking? Certainly, if it didn't continue that way, it started that way, which meant that men who were already sober and were always sober, They didn't need philosophy. The philosophy they had was their philosophy. It wasn't called philosophy. It was called knowledge, and it wasn't seen as a philosophy. So let's look at the difference between the word philosophy and knowledge. Well, knowledge is the key ingredient in philosophy, and it's usually new knowledge or special knowledge or different kind of knowledge. It's a different kind of philosophy. It's also different from the word knowledge or knowledge itself, because you don't need to be a philosophical person or have any kind of a philosophical nature or to have any kind of philosophy or education in philosophy to be knowledgeable. In fact, you could be completely knowledgeable or all-knowing, even to the point of all-knowing, without having a philosophical knowledge of anything or a necessary reason to be philosophical in nature in any way. So philosophy itself is separated from knowledge itself as the same thing and entirely different things. So where it's called philosophy is where I'll tell you the alcohol was involved, at least where it started, because before philosophy was invented, we didn't have alcohol. We were cavemen walking around on the earth. We didn't know how to make alcohol. Until we learned how to make alcohol, we didn't know how to make philosophy. And when we learned how to make philosophy, we already learned how to make alcohol. That's where philosophy came from. It came from the alcohol we were drinking. And so what I'll tell you is, although many would argue that no, philosophy has nothing to do with alcohol, it's knowledge and different kind of, what I'm saying is, for the sake of not arguing about it, just understand and be open-minded to what I'm telling you, is that the first philosophers were definitely drinkers. I guarantee you. They certainly didn't come from sober people that didn't drink, that already had knowledge. They didn't need knowledge. They weren't going to try to be philosophers until they got the alcohol. When they got the alcohol, they wanted more knowledge now, new knowledge based upon being drunk or having the new spirits in you. And so all the first philosophers were all the first drinkers. And it's what created the philosophies. And also sober people would continue on to carry on those philosophies, and they didn't have to be drinking. Certainly the alcohol would help. And to the philosophers that were really hardcore philosophers, they might say the alcohol doesn't help and you don't need it. And they're right. Okay, I'm being told to talk about being a high priest of Artemis in ancient Greece, and how it's different from being a high priest of Apollo in ancient Greece. Well, if I talk to you about Helenus, who was the high priest of high priests of Apollo himself in ancient Greece, he had a twin sister named Cassandra, who was his twin sister, who was a actual high priestess of Apollo, and she was cursed. She was cursed with not being believed. Anything she said would not be believed, because it is said that she resisted Apollo, the sun god Apollo, tried to pick up on her or have sex with her, and ultimately, or loved her, or tried to make an advance at her, or something like that. And supposedly, Cassandra, who was the twin sister of Helenus, they were the high priest and high priestess of ancient, what would become Rome and Greece. It was Troy at the time. So they were Trojans, and they were twins. And I want to also remind you and tell you that Apollo, the sun god, is a twin brother of Artemis, his twin sister, who is a goddess herself, goddess of the hunt, to become goddess of the hearth later. And to become a goddess later, or a goddess of the hearth later, but at the time she's a goddess of the hunt. Now I want to compare Apollo, the sun god, with his twin sister Artemis, the goddess of the hunt, a god and goddess that were twins. And then I'm going to tell you about Helenus, the highest priest of Apollo, but also the highest priest of Artemis, actually. So actually, Helenus is thought to be the high priest of Apollo, and he is. So it's not true that he's not. He is. But he's actually the high priest of Artemis, and his twin sister is actually not the high priestess directly of Artemis, the goddess. She's the high priestess of Apollo, the god. So the way that it was set up, when basically the most important high priest and priestess that were twin brother and sister, were twins, were also the high priest and priestess of the twin god Apollo with his twin sister Artemis. and there was a direct connection to why they were twins, and also the goddess and God were twins, because they were the popes. If you know the word pope, the pope is the only one that talks to God, and the pope will tell you what God said. So you won't, this, especially the Catholicism, the pope will say, like, I'll tell you what God says because I'll talk to God, and then I'll tell you what God told me, and then you'll say, but why can't I talk to God? Because you're not the pope, you're not the high priest you're not the head man at the top like me. And so ultimately, the Pope will be proud of his ability to talk to God directly. He'll also be powerfully feeling important that the Pope is able to talk to God directly and tell you what God told you or told him. But what God told you is what he'll tell you, not God. Because in the Catholicism, God talks to the Pope and not the people. And the people are given the Pope's message, and the Pope is the only one that has the privilege of talking to God. Now, because of the integration of Christian religion, it's not so exactly cut and dry like that, because understand that although what I just said is true, I want you to also know it may not be true, so you could argue with it, because you could say that a lot of the high priests or even the priests in the Catholicism are getting direct knowledge from God, and God is talking to them. Well, that's because of the Christian God, Jesus. Because Jesus will talk to just anybody. Jesus was the first Son of God that would talk to anybody. I'll talk to you if you're just somebody. You don't have to be a high priest or priestess. I'll talk to you if you're just a person that's not a high priest or priestess. If you want to talk to me, if I'm Jesus, I will talk to you. You can talk to me. And so ultimately, when Jesus came around, he was a son of God that was the first son of God that did something very different from all the other sons of God before him. And there were many sons of God before him. So don't think that Jesus was the only son of God that ever came to earth. He was a newer one that comes to earth, and he's also the newest one. So the newest son of God that has come to earth is Jesus. And I'm thanking God he's telling me, good job. You're telling them exactly what they need to hear. The Pope is not going to allow you or want you to think you could be him, or even that he's going to understand that there is a kind of importance here that can be a negative, especially where it's not regarding the Pope, because understand the Pope doesn't have to have an attitude that he's better than you. Well, he's the only one that talks to God, and the rest of them really can't. But the truth is, it's not true what I just said, because of Jesus Christ and because of Christian religion, they can talk to God, and anyone can, and you can. You could talk to Jesus, and he is God. So he's the Son of God, actually. Maybe you could talk to actually God too. But what I'll say is that Jesus is the one defining entity. Jesus Christ is the one that allowed you can talk to me, anybody. It's not the Pope that I talk to. I'll talk to the Pope, but I'm Jesus Christ. I'll talk to any of you that want to talk to me. Who wants to talk to me? I'll talk to you. And so basically, it's the behavior of the influence of Christian religion onto Catholicism that says that Catholics could actually talk to God. They're actually talking to a Christian God that's also Catholic, because those two religions, one has the mother of Jesus Christ, the Catholicism, who is the mother of Jesus Christ. So although the Catholicism is expressingly focused on Mary, the mother of Christ, they're also accepting Christ 100% through the mother of Christ. They accept it through Mary. So it's different how they get Christ. It's also why, because understand that God could talk to Mother Mary or Mary herself and tell her anything, and Mary could tell you something that God didn't tell you. So the entity of Mary is Christ's mother, and that's confusing. And I wouldn't need to talk about her too much, except to say that what I want you to know and understand and be aware of is that the mixing of the Christian religion into the world of a democracy with Catholicism in that democracy caused a mixing and not necessarily a conflict. What it caused is it enabled the Catholicism to have God talk to them and be willing to talk to them if they want to speak, if they can. Now, understand that just because God's willing to talk to you and will try, he speaks to your heart and your feelings, and you'll have to interpret those feelings and learn how to. So it's important to mention that just because God's willing to talk to you and he'll do it, doesn't mean you'll be able to understand him. And especially if you're not a high priest or trained in being a pope, or there's only one pope, but the pope is a high priest at the top. And a high priest is not at the top unless he's a pope and a high priest. So if he's a pope and a high priest, he's a high priest at the top. And if he's a high priest, he might not be the pope, actually. He just might be under the pope, who's under God directly. So the Pope is the one getting, in Catholicism, is the one getting all the info, spreading the message to all the Catholics. And if the Catholics are not the Pope and they're getting information from God, it's likely they're getting it from Jesus or through his mother Mary, who's telling them about it. So it's possible that the Catholics will talk to God too, all of them. But the truth is, the Pope is the only one that's allowed to talk to God, and that's why he is the Pope. No one else is going to get God talking to him, because God won't talk to them. And ultimately, even if they talk to God, God will hear them and hear their prayers. That's why they pray to him. But they won't. God's not in a habit in the Catholicism to talk to anybody but the Pope himself. It's also why he has his title and why he's that great. So, and he is that great even today. So the reality is that the Pope will also be aware that many people that are not the Pope or the high priest get to talk to God. I don't know if he'd actually know what I'm sharing with you, or he'd actually just be aware of it, feeling it. It's true, whether he knew about this or not. If you brought it up to him, he would have been familiar with everything. So he would know it. He'd know it in his feelings, whether or not he'd ever discussed it and consciously thought about it. He would, as soon as you talk to him about it consciously, he would absolutely be already familiar with it. So even though he'd never known this information or even discussed it with anyone, he would be surprised to know it and say, well, I did already know it. I felt it. Yeah, you're right. Or no, you're wrong. Or however he agreed or disagreed with it. It makes it so that when your feelings are in line with your knowledge, or when you're getting a privilege of being a pope, you get to talk to God. So understand that Jesus Christ is the one who shares information with you if you're not the pope or not the high priest. And so what's important to know about this is that the high priests that are not high priests they're not high priests. They're people that are not high priests or popes. And so that they'll be getting information from God as a privilege, and then they're supposed to distribute it to the world or the people. And it's what makes a high priest important. Understand that the high priest would have no self-importance or even think he was special. He wouldn't even want to do anything that he does. In fact, you ask a high priest, why are you a high priest? He'd say, I don't want to be a high priest. Why would anyone want to be one? Well, the reason why they would is because they're getting information from God and you're not. They get to tell you about it, and they love to share with you everything, because it's what makes them a high priest. It's why they are and why God tells them and not you, because it's the distinguishing element of being a high priest of God is you get to be told and talk to God and share a conversation with him. He shares it with you and he talks to you, and then he'll tell you, I don't talk to them, I talk to you only. You get to be important and share it with them, and maybe they'll think you're important for sharing it with them. And ultimately, I want you to know you're important for sharing it with them, and I'm sharing it with you and not with them. And ultimately, that's why I call you my high priest and why I say you're important and they're important too. The reality is they won't talk to me. You will. It's your job and why you're called high priest. And ultimately, the Pope is the high priest of high priests, which also is getting a privilege because he talks to God directly. So do the high priests. But understand, the Pope will actually have a privilege that the high priests don't have. And he is a high priest. Now, Artemis and Apollo would be the curse. He wants me to talk about the curse of Cassandra. The curse of Cassandra is, or Cassandra, is that she'll never be believed in anything she does. It comes from the goddess, because Apollo did not want the divine feminine in Troy to be recognized as believable. Even if they said a revelation, they were told by the king to King Priam, if any of the daughters of Apollo or the high priests of Apollo give out any information that comes from Apollo himself, the son of Zeus, or even Zeus, it cannot be believed, because I don't want any of the women in Troy to be believed, because it was already during the Trojan conflict and there was a fight and the women were directing that fight in Troy. It was against the men. And so the women and men of Troy were fighting long before Troy was invaded. There was a struggle between the divine feminine and masculine collectives in Troy, between the women and men. And Troy was in a civil war, spiritual civil war. The women against men, but not just against men of Troy, more against men of the world and men of other kingdoms. So the women were trying to usurp the power of goddess as God. And ultimately in Troy, the goddesses all fell. They were all destroyed because Zeus killed off all of the goddesses that were feminine, leaving Athena, the only one that was masculine and the only one still in charge. So basically, if the goddesses had any power after Troy, it was through Athena and not through Minerva or Artemis or any of the feminine goddesses, Hera. They were all taken down and out. So Athena was left in, and she's ultimately a god, not a goddess. But she's a goddess in the sense that she's actually her father and not from her mother. She doesn't have a mother. She's just from her father. It makes it so women feel gypped out, like they don't have a goddess. I want you to understand that I'm sharing unheard of insights here, and they are unheard of insights. Understand that what I want to let you know is that if Athena is a god who is a goddess, it's because she came from her father Zeus's forehead. She doesn't have mom. She doesn't have Hera. She doesn't have any feminine goddess from no matter what her name is, and so Athena is, if she's in charge as a god of this world, well, you wouldn't be able to tell the difference between her and her father, because they say in mythology Athena came from her forehead of her father Zeus. Well, what does that mean? Did she really pop out of a god, her dad's forehead? No. Well, if she did, no, she didn't. What they said would say that to you, and why it's true, even though it's not necessarily true, is because Athena had masculine Zeus. Her father was Zeus. Athena was a goddess that was just her father, didn't have any of her mother in her, because there was no mother in her. The mother goddess was not in Athena, only Zeus was in her. And Zeus created his daughter Athena and made her be born that way so he could put the woman in charge as Athena in this world, and Athena would be the god of this world, and so would the god of this world be the god of this world. And ultimately, then the god of this world says there is no goddess anymore unless it's Athena, my goddess daughter, who's a god, and she's me, which means that you won't know the difference between me and her, or her and I. And when there's only one God, and it happens to be me or Athena, it's going to be Athena or me. And if it is Athena, it is a goddess, but she's me. She's her dad, her father, which means that you won't see her as a goddess. You won't feel her as a goddess. You'll actually feel her as a god and think she's not a goddess. And it's important then to share this information with you, that you have to know that if there is any divine feminine in charge of this world right now, it's Athena, through Athena, the goddess, who's her dad. And you'll think she is her dad. If she came to you, you would just think it's her dad. You would say, "Hi, Father Jehovah," and he might say, "Well, if it's my daughter Athena, Jehovah, it's still Jehovah, Athena, Jehovah." So ultimately, that's how you have to know that if you want to share information in this is profound information, that in fact you're following God. It could be that you're following Athena, the goddess, but ultimately she's say, "I'm not a goddess. I'm my dad, and he is me, or I am him." And then he'd agree. Yeah, she's my daughter. She is me. I am her. We are the one. We are one and the same. And so then you'd say, wow, so a goddess could actually be ruling, even though we think a goddess is not. Well, if it's Athena, well, I guess you could say a goddess is not ruling because it's Athena, the goddess, and she's a god. So she's her dad. You understand? So it's interesting. The women could feel good about that. The reason why I'd share that kind of piece of information is because the women would need to know that goddess is not coming back. She's not ever coming back, and she won't be allowed to. She was destroyed, and ultimately there was a war in heaven, and the god Zeus killed all his wife. Unfortunately so. It's very disturbing and very sad that Zeus would say, "I can't trust my own wife and my own daughter anymore. They're murderous of me." They'd kill my own Trojan men, and they'd take my own trusted popes out and servants out. I can't trust them at all. And in fact, I have to destroy them, and they'll live on in the collective of women on earth, which meant wow. Okay. I love doing this. Okay. It's ultimately that great. So it's okay. The world can heal, and we can be okay. We can win. I want you to know that we're together, and we're the same. We're the same thing if we want to be. And ultimately, what God's going to tell you is that we are the same thing. And if you're against your enemy, well, when Jesus told you, pray for your enemy and love your enemy as yourself, he meant it. And when I tell you Satan is your enemy and the devil is your enemy, well, you love your enemy as yourself and you pray for your enemy. So I want you to pray for the devil and Satan, and know that won't be good enough. And they certainly won't accept it as good enough, because they'll say we're gods of this world. We're not just your equals. So to pray for us and accept us is all great, but we're actually gods of this world, and we say so. So ultimately, that's where it gets where it's not good enough to just pray for your enemy and love them as yourself, because your enemy is Satan and the devil and no one else. So understand that you don't have enemies that aren't them. And if you're going to pray if you're going to pray for your enemies, it's Satan and the devil, and consider that they're not gods, well, they're going to say you need to know something more. We certainly are gods. We're the only gods of this world. Jesus is not God of this world. Well, he is to the Christians, and we'll allow it, but it's our world. and it is Jesus' world because we allow the Christians to be in it, and we allow the Catholicism to be in it. So here's a very controversial potential here that it doesn't need to be controversial. Understand that we're not having to agree to follow Satan or the devil or even acknowledge them as gods of this world. Okay, stop right there. Let's say that again because I messed that one up. That statement's wrong. Let's say that you don't have to follow the gods of this world. They're not going to demand you do anything for them. You don't have to follow them nor worship them, and they allow you to be free and have your own free spirit and be free-willed. And you don't have to follow God of this world. You could say you want to follow yourself or a peanut, but ultimately maybe you don't want to follow anything. You want to be an atheist and follow yourself. Maybe you want to call yourself a god. We're even allowing that. We're allowing everything. So understand, but this is a fact, is that they would tell you that if you're going to pray for your enemies, and so you're going to pray for us, well, then that's not good enough. We demand acknowledgement, and we're going to demand you recognize us and respect us even. We're going to even demand some respect. And if you, at least you don't disrespect us, for sure. If you disrespect us, we'll call that a lack of showing respect. So you don't have to respect us, quote unquote, but you have to acknowledge us, quote unquote. And that's not my opinion. Or this is not my opinion. Well, if it is, that could be my opinion too then. Understand, but maybe it's not. It's not important to mention that what I'm saying, it doesn't matter if it comes from me or not, or that it's my opinion, or that I think any of this, because maybe I don't think any of this. Maybe I'm just being a high priest to God. Maybe it's not the same God that you follow, because maybe it's the high priest to the Son of God, who claims to be the Son of God, who's God, and so it is God. And maybe I'd follow Zeus or Jehovah too, and maybe I'd follow Jesus too, and I claim I do. I follow all of them, or any of them, and I'll worship probably Jehovah and Jesus, and only if I go to heaven, because Satan and the devil told me, you can't worship Jesus, and we won't let you worship Jesus and Jehovah here. This is our world. You can worship us if you want, but we said you don't have to. You don't have to worship us, but you have to acknowledge us, and that's what we demand. We'll attack you, and we'll destroy you over and over, life after lifetime, if you don't. And ultimately, that's just terribly disturbing then. But it's not that disturbing. Understand, it's really not. Because understand what they're saying is we're not requiring you to follow us. We're not requiring you to do what we say. We're not going to tell you to do anything, and you don't have to do anything we say. We want you to acknowledge who we are and damn well know who we are. And then we're going to say it's okay that you don't follow us, but not before. Maybe we'll demand you follow us before, because we need our respect and acknowledgement first. And then we'll say, okay, now you're free-willed. You have a free will. Since you don't want to follow us, you could follow yourself, call yourself a god. I don't care. We just wanted our acknowledgement and our respect that we are gods of this world and we are your enemy. Okay, great. So, that's heavy-duty information. That is. I don't want to get caught in that one again, though. I get caught up in a lot of things, and ultimately in the negativity, I could get caught in it, but I'm not caught in it. I'm trying to show it to you, so I catch myself in it on purpose to show it to you. But don't get caught in it, and I don't want you to get caught in it. Understand that if you're giving acknowledgement to the devil or Satan because they claim to be gods of this world, well, I'll tell you what Jesus and Jehovah would say if they're with me. They'd say it's true. We cast Satan down to the world. We did let him rule it. He's ruling it. He's the greatest, strongest bad guy that's bad and got thrown down to earth, and he's not allowed to be up in that heaven. He has to stay down on this earth, and this domain is all he gets. He doesn't get that great domain up there that's Jesus and Jehovah's. That's our domain up there. It's also down here, but it's not down here because basically the domain down here is that if that's allowed in it, it's because the devil's being nice and saying, fine, I'll allow Jesus and Jehovah here because they're my dad and brother. But the reality is this is our world. You're going to have to acknowledge us. And as long as you only acknowledge our dad and our brother while we're here, and you're not acknowledging us, we'll punish you and we'll get mad at you and we'll do everything against you. You're doing it against us. So that's what the whole point here is how do we fix it? How do we have a solution? Well, we have to know that the goddesses are not going to be allowed to come back. But Mary's already back, and Mary has to be a happy slave. Ultimately, Satan enslaved all the divine feminine collective when they killed Minerva. They killed off the goddess. They told her they killed off Hera. They destroyed her. And understand, if Hera's hiding up there right now watching this, well, hi, Hera. Hi, Minerva. If you're up there watching this, I'm sure you're probably not, unless I'm wrong. And I wouldn't say I'd love to be wrong, but I'd be pleased to be wrong, because if you're actually alive, well, then I'm glad you're not dead. And that's genuine. But understand, if you are dead, well, I've already been told that by God of this world, who says he's the devil and Satan, and he told me I did kill off both of them. But my dad did it. I wasn't even here until the 7th year of the Trojan War, which meant that what the devil and Satan would tell you is they didn't even exist until the 7th year of the war in Troy. So there was no Satan and there was no devil until the 7th year in Troy, when the conflict couldn't be solved, and Zeus created his sons. He killed off all his sons. Apollo, he let him get killed off. If Zeus didn't kill Apollo, the sun god, he's dead. I'll tell you, he's dead as Minerva is. He's dead as Hera is. Apollo, sun god's my favorite god, maybe of that ancient Greece. I love Apollo, but the reality is he's dead. I'm sure he's as dead as Minerva is. If he's hiding up there and he's also pretending this, I'll say, hi, Apollo. If you're not dead, well, I'm glad you're not dead. All right. But I've been told you're dead 3,000 years now because Zeus killed you, your dad. He killed all of you. He killed his daughters, his wife. He killed every one of his family because he wanted to ensure that he wasn't going to get killed himself, and he wasn't wrong. Understand that if Zeus hadn't destroyed his entire family, his own godhead was in danger of being destroyed himself, and they tried it, and they actually did try it. So he was also familiar with that behavior before he even made any judgment and did such bad things. The God of this world is not the God of that world or that heaven up there, and the goddesses are no longer allowed. They're no longer allowed, but guess what? The God is allowed. So men are allowed to rule the world. Men are also allowed to be in charge because Adam came from God and Eve came from Adam. Understand how hard that is to imagine. Many women are mad about that, but Minerva is the most angry about it because how dare you say that us women are just from Adam? We're not from God? No, you're not. You're from Adam, who's from God, and Adam's the only one that's from God. You're from Adam. You came from a man. Well, woman, you're from a man. Well, that certainly is disappointing, and understand it's also not entirely true because there are select women on this earth that are dead goddesses that are here as humans that don't know anything about this, and they're dead goddesses. So Minerva's here somewhere on earth, and she's a woman born, I'm sure of it. She's a woman that's a human, that's immortal, and she's not immortal. She's a mortal, and so she dies like every one of us, and she's also doesn't know who she is. She's probably mad about it. She's probably really pissed off that she doesn't have any understanding, and she's mad because she knows she's important. She says, I was a goddess. Or she doesn't know how to say that. She's saying, I must have been somebody important. How come I feel like a slave? Well, ultimately, Minerva will be the most mad about it, which means that the woman on earth that's the most mad at God will probably be Minerva. I promise. In fact, I would bet the way to find Minerva is to find the most angry woman alive that's mad at God and against God. That's probably almost certainly Artemis, Minerva, Hera, because they are going to be the most mad. They're going to be the only ones that are that mad because they're going to say, oh my God, I can't believe I'm dead. And I don't even know I'm dead. I'm a human and I'm mortal now. And he's punishing us. He's killing us. We're going to come back and die again. We have to get stuck doing this over and over, forever, over and over. And ultimately, it's not fair to her. She's going to be mad about it. But then understand, what can you do? Okay, now I don't have a whole lot of time, he's saying. So I got to end this in a minute or 2 minutes, or I don't know how long, but hang on. Thank you, God, for helping me to help them. And I hope they get some help from this because certainly I get a lot of help from this. I love it when God talks to me. I love it when God's allowing me to be in it, like he's acknowledging me. I feel important, and I feel like, oh my gosh, God is actually including me in his world. And it's nothing more than the only thing I ever wanted. If I didn't get to talk to God, I didn't consider life was important. In fact, life had no importance without God, is the truth for me. And my opinion is, I'm telling you my opinion, that without God, I'm not only worthless and nobody, but nothing. And so with God, I'm everything. I'm everybody in all things, and I'm loving it. So I could be a part of this world if I could be a part of God, but I have to be a conscious part of God, knowing it. And so God will say, because this man demanded to have a tangible relationship with me and then knew he was cursed to death forever, he knew without that tangible relationship, it was not good enough to have a faith-based one. If he thinks he could be some God son I killed, or if he wants to think of himself as some God that's dead to make himself feel better, well, you can do it too, whether it's true or not. And ultimately, if it's not true, you can still do it because you could take the same spirit he's taking that was him that's dead, and you could take it too. And you're not him, but you will have him, which means you just got the same dead God he is, and he's dead. Because if he was alive, he wouldn't be a mortal person, or he would be immortal, not mortal. So ultimately, whether I like to pretend I'm God, or I was God, or I'm a dead God, or I have to have that, it's that important to talk to God or have the relationship with God. It is. To me, it is. It's a matter of life and death. In fact, there is no life without God with me. And it just makes it so my ability to share with you this information, it gives me a reason to exist. Without it, I don't have a reason to exist. If I can't be the high priest of God and do what I'm doing, What reason do I have? Without being a high priest, I am nothing, because I'm the high priest of God and nothing else. You see how hard it is for a high priest that has no purpose in the world because his religion is long dead, or yeah, he is dead, or if he wants to imagine that he is his old God that's dead, well, he is. So it's okay that we all do it if we want to, if it makes us feel better, and it doesn't really matter if there's an original Apollo walking around, like I could be him, or ultimately wish I was him. Yeah, there is an Apollo, the god Apollo, who's walking around in a man, and he's a human, and he's one man, and not all men. And that spirit of Apollo gets in all men. But there's only one man that's Apollo that's here now. And understand there's only one Minerva that's here now. There's only one Hera, but they're here now, and they're no longer gods and goddesses. They're dead. And they're basically going to be dead over and over. They died. They're on a punishment, cycle of punishment of life and death and rebirth and re-death, to be erased and then relearn. And it's the most frustrating for the original Hera or Minerva that's just a human. She doesn't get to follow anybody. And in fact, she's probably the biggest loser of all, because she's like, because not only is she dead, and she probably feels the same as this life doesn't mean anything to me if I can't be who I used to be, the greatest god of all. Like, damn, I'm nothing. In fact, I'm lesser than these humans. Well, right. How are you going to find your place in this world when your place is dead and gone and was a divine place, which no longer can be here? You know, you can't be a god again. If you're a dead god, you're dead. So then what does that mean? I'm alive? You're alive like all the other humans. And whether you're the original Hera that's alive, and there's only one, there's a bunch of Heras that take the original Hera that's alive, and none of them are happy, including her, because there's no difference between a human that's no longer a goddess anymore and knows it or doesn't know it. The rest of them that take that goddess are also human and don't know it or know it, which means that it's no more of an advantage for Minerva herself, who's a human now, than the rest of the collective of women that are taking that same Minerva herself. And she's not special. She doesn't feel special. She certainly feels like she's not special. She says, I'm not no Minerva. I suck. Nobody follows me. Well, I know that's why, because you are the Minerva. That's why no one will follow you. In fact, you'll be followed lesser than the ones that aren't Minerva that have Minerva. So the Minerva herself is more punished than the rest of them. She'll feel like she's nobody and curse the worst. That's Cassandra, the high priestess closest to Artemis. She's the one who's the best. She's also the curse the worst. In fact, Apollo didn't curse anybody but Cassandra and her collective of feminine, including all the women, which meant that all the women in the world did not get cursed. When Apollo, the sun god, cursed Cassandra, the high priestess of that sun god, well, he said that I will curse you, so no one will believe you, and you're still going to be high priestess and give all your truth out, and no one will believe any of your truth, but that's exactly what I want, because it'll be true, meaning what you'll tell them won't be wrong. It won't be a lie. It'll just be not believed, but it'll be told to them. They won't believe you. You'll still be doing your job. You'll be conveying my truth, and it is true. They won't believe you or give you an ounce of credit for it, because they're going to actually get your high priestess service. It'll be true and actually accurate, but they won't believe you, because that's what I did to you. I cursed you. I cursed you so that you'd never be believed, and you'd give all your prophecies, and then none of them would be believed, but they'd all be given, and I wanted them to be given. And so you're doing an important job for me when you're not being believed. I want you to know how important you are when you're not being believed. When you're telling everybody what they're not believing, and they're looking at you saying, it's not even believable, we don't believe you. Well, I want you to know that not only is it believable, it's true, and it is believable. It's just not believable to all those that are watching you as accursed. Cassandra, the woman who tries to give the Apollo, the gods, the sun gods, predictions, she'll put the goddess in there. She'll tell the predictions like the goddess would like it. And so Apollo didn't like it. He said, my high priestess, she's selfishly injecting the goddesses into whatever prediction she's giving. She's a high priestess, which is being a high priestess is the goddess first and me second. So I'm going to curse her. So none of her predictions will be believed. And they'll be all true still. So she'll be doing a great service to me. It's just the problem is she'll never enjoy a minute of her reason to be important, because none of her what she does will be believed. Ultimately, she'll stop doing it. She'll think she sucks, and she'll ultimately feel punished. No one believes her, and she feels cursed, and she is. But understand what I want her to know. She's free to be happy now in a much bigger way, because I want her to know that she's still giving predictions that are true. Even though no one will believe her, she's still doing an important job. She's actually telling those people what they won't believe. Now she should expect they're not going to believe it. I want her to keep doing it now and have some importance and know that she'll never be believed, because Apollo cursed her to never be believed. But she's still doing his work. And she's still telling them what they need to hear. And although they won't believe her, Apollo will appreciate her and say, one day, if my dad lets me come back, I'll let you come back. But I can't let you come back. Why I can't come back? Because I'm as destroyed as you are. We were both destroyed. But we're still here, and we're still here then as gods in a sense, destroyed and human and just as mortal and worthless as the rest of them. We're all a part of the same mortality, humans in the human race. And so be important if you are a woman to think that maybe you won't be believed, or if you are a man, maybe you won't be believed if you're doing the goddess, because understand the goddess is not going to be believed. If you're a man that's predicting anything or talking anything through the goddess, you won't be believed. It's what Apollo did when he cursed Cassandra, is to say that the women in the divine feminine collective that want to try to be special high priestesses, that want to take those predictions and be one-sided with them, well, they were one-sided with them. I had to curse my high priestess and tell her, continue to do my work, and no one's going to believe you now. But continue to do it, because you need to tell them so they'll know. Even though they don't believe you, they're going to need to know what the predictions are. How crazy is that? Those people won't believe you, but you'll be telling them the truth. You won't get no credit for it. But the truth is, God still says you're still doing my work. And although you're not getting credit for it, they won't give you credit for it. In fact, you'll get no credit for it. You'll be disbelieved for it. But I'll appreciate you. And I'll actually tell you, if I could tell you I can't undo the curse, if Apollo can't undo the curse, it's because he would tell her, I cursed you when I was a god and I was alive. I'm dead now. I'm as helpless as you are. I'm just a man. I'm no greater than any other man. In fact, the spirit that's in me that used to be great is still great, but all men have it, and any man could be me. I'm me, plus any man could be me and claim to be better than me. So ultimately, I'm no greater than any other man, and it doesn't matter if I'm an original or not. Unless I can get empowered, I can't take the curse off you. And my ego loves that idea, that I could sit here and, what if I used to be the god Apollo? Understand that I'm not Apollo. I'll say I'll be his high priest, Hellenus. Okay, I'll say I'm a pope, because I'll say that there's a high priest named Helenus, the brother of Cassandra, that was not a god. He was not claiming to be a god. He was claiming to be a high priest of Apollo. So he says, I have him. I'm the closest to him. Can I say it's me? Well, you can, because Apollo is dead, and you're the only one that has him. So if Apollo's spirit that was a god went into Helenus, the high priest that was the pope, the reason why it did was because of it. When you killed the high god Apollo, where did he go? His spirit. It went into humans. And which human did it go into? Well, probably his high priest pope, right? Yes, because that was the one he was closest to. It was going to be where he went, which meant the god of Apollo went into a man. And don't think that man's actually God. Even now, he's actually just the high priest of that god, and was then and still is now. And so he's got him closest to the high degree. Like it's like where the first copy is. He's not an original, because Apollo's the only original that ever was, and the original's been killed. So what the first copy is Helenus, the high priest or pope to him, and that copy is the first copy. It's a copy like all the other copies. So he can't claim to be some special anything, except he's the first copy, and the rest of them are copies too. So we're all copies, and he'll just say, but I'm the first copy, closest to the original. Well, then he'd probably have some pride in that, to say like, yeah, at least I used to be the first copy. That's pretty special. The Pope of high priests is the first copy of God. That's how you can understand it. It just makes a person feel important if they want to, and you can be important and try to be the first copy, and you could take that first copy spirit, same as the first copy that takes it. So ultimately, we're all trying to be important. We're all trying to be powerful. We're all trying to have a purpose in this world. We're all trying to do our job, and our job won't be believed if we're Cassandra or from the goddess, because of Apollo's curse, which can't be undone until Apollo comes back. And I'm not going to say he's not coming back. I wish he comes back. I hope he comes back. But what I'm being told is there's only one God now, and it ain't Apollo. So it's Jehovah. So the facts are the facts. And understand that although I wish Apollo could come back so bad, no, he's probably, well, if he does come back, it's not something I could demand or wish, other than wish for. And so, yeah, it would be nice. I want to think so. And otherwise, I know that Jehovah's the only one God in this world, and it's not Apollo. Well, it might be his dad, or was his dad, yeah, but he got killed by him. So my dad murdered me if I was Apollo. But the goddesses murdered me. So the truth is, and I'm not claiming to be Apollo. I might claim to be his high priest, Helenus. Okay, so I just want you to know that I'm not claiming to be Apollo or dead God. I'm claiming to be maybe his high priest, Helenus, who was a man and just a man. That would be my grandfather. If my grandfather was Helenus, the high priest of Apollo, and he was, so I'm just saying that my ego wants to say that. Yeah, I get some kind of importance here, don't I? Well, no, you're an ego. Why should you have importance? Because I want to be important. I want to have some kind of importance. I want to feel like I got a reason to exist. Well, what? Do you need a reason to exist, Mr. Ego? Well, yeah, I want to like myself. Okay. Well, then, should we tell you can't like yourself? I want to feel important. If my grandfather was Helenus, why can't I say it? Well, you just already did say it. But I don't think they're going to think you're very not egotistical trying to be a big shot. I think they're going to think you think you're a big shot. Well, I want to be a big shot. Can I be a big shot? No, you can't be a big shot. In fact, if you're trying to be a big shot, I wouldn't make my ego the high priest. Oh, okay. Well, then can I still have the ego and be nice to it since I'm not really going to reject it since I am a high priest and I'm good? Oh, you're saying you have an ego because you're the high priest and you're good? Well, yeah, if I'm the high priest, I'm not going to reject the ego and say you're misbehaving, so you can't talk to me, the high priest of God. If I'm actually the high priest of Apollo, I'm going to take that ego and say, look, you got a problem, Mr. Ego. We need to get it right. And you're not even close to right. So why don't you come sit on my shoulder, Mr. Ego? You misbehaving egotistical fool. I'll have you. Well, why would I want the ego? Because I'm trying to help it. The ego's misbehaving. It's all screwed up. Who better to help the ego that's all messed up than me or my grandfather or whoever was the high priest of Apollo if he's not my grandfather? I'm saying he is or was, but that's only my understanding and what I think. It really doesn't matter. Well, it does matter, actually, but it's important to know my ego is the only one that wanted to even say that, any of that. Yeah, the rest of me says that I didn't need to say that. Ultimately, I'm not disappointed. It's fine. If my ego wants to jump out and say, I'm somebody too, aren't I? Well, yeah, it may. Yeah, we'll acknowledge you, ego. Especially, I'll make sure you get acknowledgement because you are important too in this world, even though you're misbehaving and wrong a lot of the time on purpose, with the purpose. So, yeah, I approve of you and I also disapprove of you. But I'll let you in and I'll try to take care of you since you don't have to take care of yourself. And they certainly won't take care of you. So, yeah, ego, you're with me since no one else will have you. I'll have to be your dad. Okay, there's the responsibility of the high priest of God. He's going to take the ego and try to help it because it needs a lot of help. It doesn't even know how to get anything right. Okay, that's it. All right. Be good and know that I am your God. My ego loved that. Of this not that world or heaven. So whoever just spoke to me was trying to claim to be the God of this world, but not trying to claim to be Jesus or Jehovah or God of that heaven up there. He's saying that's not mine. I keep away from that. That's not mine because I'm not God over it. I'm only God over this world, this part here that's been cursed and thrown down, and we all got thrown down here to serve a punishment forever unless we get out of it. Now, the last thing I want to say is, if I may, okay, yes, if you become immortal again, it's possible. If you're an original god or goddess that's been killed, you're no greater than any other person that takes your spirit and still will, and so do you. And just because it's yours, it doesn't have any power, and it's no more powerful than anyone else taking it that isn't actually you. So you can't be. You'll want to be important and feel important if you're an original, but understand you're a dead original, and understand it's the same thing as a copy. It's probably because your ancestors were humans that were close to those gods and goddesses, and it'll make you think like you want to believe you're one. And so go ahead if you want to. Ultimately, you need power. You need some importance, and you need to feel important. You need to feel important. Don't think you're going to be going around being humble all the time, saying you don't need importance, because I'll ask you, what the hell's wrong with you that you don't need importance? You mean you want to go around feeling like you're not important? People actually think they could do it. And the ones that are actually appearing to do it are utterly ridiculous. Yes, we do need importance. All of us need to be important, and we need to feel important with a purpose and a reason to exist, and we have to have it, and we can't not have it. That's all I got. Thanks.